The following is a production of cprundown.com. The views and opinions expressed by the host of this podcast are those of the individual and not of any affiliated companies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Rundown on Fun, a weekly podcast covering the Cedar Fair Entertainment Company, the amusement industry, and the business of fun. Here are your hosts, Karsten Anderson, Evan Schultz, and Kyle Hu.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Rundown on Fun, a weekly podcast where we cover Cedar Fair, Cedar Point, and everything to do with fun. And this is going to be kind of a interesting episode. As you all know, the last episode we had was CoasterCon, and hi, if you don't recognize my voice, my name's Kyle. I used to host this show.
Welcome back.
Yeah, I wasn't there, but here we are to kick off season 2. So tonight we're going to be talking about kind of some industry news, mostly relating to Cedar Fair that we've either forgotten about, or not necessarily forgotten about, but just haven't hit due to scheduling conflicts. And then later on in the show, we are going to be having Eric from the Lost Island theme park on to talk about their new park. So yeah, that's about what we have planned for tonight. And let me just start off by saying that, don't get me wrong, I love the summers. I love when the parks are open, but this is one of my least favorite times of the year, just because we're in those dog days of summer. The special events at the beginning of the season are over. We're after the 4th of July. It's not quite haunt yet. Everybody, their heads aren't really in what's going on right now. We're all thinking about haunt and next year's plans. And speaking of those next year plans, we have some interesting information about the coaster at Cedar Point that used to be named Top Thrill Dragster.
Yes, the coaster formerly known as Dragster.
I think that might be the last time we say that. Probably not, but I was going to say, yeah, definitely. The construction is going full tilt, full steam ahead. I was able to ride Iron Dragon and Power Tower yesterday just to try to get like a glimpse of what was going on and try to paint a picture for you guys. But currently they've got, I'll start off with like the easy stuff and more complicated stuff and whatever afterwards. So anyway, they're starting to paint the tower, the actual lift tower that's yellow. They're starting to paint it like a smoke gray. And then they're also painting the track that was like red and white or red, all red or whatever on the drop side. They're starting to paint that track like we talked about it, Evan. It was like a drop of like that smoke gray color into the white paint, because it's just a little bit off. It's not like pure white, but it's like white if you just see it by itself.
So we were able to see it probably a couple weeks ago, where they had painted some of the white track, this new white, but it led up to some of the old color still. And yeah, like Karsten said, it's the old white is white for sure, but in this new color, it's like, okay, we have this just, clean white color, but we're going to take a drop of that charcoal or smoke gray that we're using for the supports and just toss it in the bucket and make it just the slightest little bit of gray in there. And it looks really, really sleek.
I don't know if we don't know if that's the full, like if that's primer or if that's like the real stuff.
Could be primer, but
I mean, yeah. And I was just say Cedar Point keeps coming out with a bunch of teases. By the way, they keep tweeting whenever they tweet about said Top Thrill Dragster. They keep tweeting it at 4:20 p.m. I don't know if anybody's noticed that, but every single time they tweet, it's at 4:20 p.m. They have a hashtag called CP24PHP. And Evan and I in the last podcast talked about that, so we won't talk about it a whole lot. But yeah, so definitely, stay tuned to all the crazy pictures that we'll have on CP Rundown showing the painting. And they just obviously started doing new track replacement. Well, quote unquote new. We don't know if it's new or if it's the old Top Thrill Dragster track that got painted and redone or something. We're not sure on that. But they started painting that.
Being reinstalled.
Yeah, being reinstalled with the white paint or off-white paint. And it goes all the way until pretty much when I got on Power Tower, I was able to see how far it extended. It got all the way until the beginning of the planter that they used to have like right around where the bleachers were, where the tree is and stuff. You can still see where the tree is and everything.
Okay.
Like right around probably maybe the start of the bleachers going towards the tower. So somewhere around there. So there's a lot of straight.
We got
track.
like half the brake run done.
Yeah. But the park did when they did release, and say, hey, we're installing new track, whatever. This is what they said, and I quote: "It says finished ? Nah, fam. We're just getting started," with a race car emoji and a room sign or something. So yeah. So, and then just to play on the teasers or whatever, there was like I think like last week or the week before or something, they posted that there was like painting going on with the white paint or whatever, and then they had like and like a spaceship and like a rocket ship and things like that. So they're playing into the race theme and also the theme of space. So, and
that picture that they posted more recently with the Nah Fam, which made me actually laugh out loud.
Yeah, right.
So hip and cool.
So if
like
it's
the young kids.
So if it's I'm super curious on this whole thing.
And the finish line is still there. They made a big, I guess, a big deal of making sure the finish line was the focal point of that most recent tweet. So
yeah. So definitely. Definitely stay tuned to our Facebook page because we'll have a ton of photo updates daily-ish or so. I know, really nerdy, getting more nerdy. There was a guy that was on one of the man lifts, and he was actually wrenching down all of the bolts and checking all the bolts on the tower and stuff and just making sure they're super tight. Evan, I sent you the video. I'll probably post it maybe on our YouTube page or something. It's like a minute long or so, but you can see kind of like what the park and what parks do pretty much to, like an off season or whatever, just to kind of show off like, hey, this is kind of like what we do in the off season, but you get to see it like up close and personal. And then really quick, they actually started, Evan, I don't think you've seen this, but they started putting a bunch of foundation and it looks like concrete's going to be ready-ish. And it's like pretty much where the turn was, for
like where you used to exit.
Yeah. So like your unload platform kind of thing, but it's a real tight turn, which is interesting. Like a real tight, like almost like a C. And it looks like it's like turning almost really close into like whatever station foundation is there. So it's not like super into it. It's like a really tight turn. So I was riding with Kyle and Sierra, and I was like, do you guys have any idea? Like, and they were like, this just keeps getting more confusing and more confusing. So
I wonder if it's such a tight turn at the old exit to maybe make the load area like where the ramps into the load station used to be. And then where the load station used to be will be like, okay, this is where you transfer over to get on the spike, maybe something like that. That's kind of the vision I had.
Yeah. No, I'm super, super, super excited about it. And
I mean, hey, announcement season is like a month away. Like it very well. National Roller Coaster Day is what, August 16th? We're recording this on July 13th. So we're a month and 3 days till what could be. I mean, I'm not saying the announcement is going to be the 16th of August, but that tends to be like one of the big amusement park announcement days. So we're getting close here. It's exciting. It's really exciting.
Yep, for sure.
And I mean, I think that's about all there is to say about Dragster, but the park did make a little announcement. What was that, yesterday or the day before? About
I think it was 2 days ago.
A menu item 2 days ago. Okay. To a new, they didn't really go into great detail about the food, but a new menu at the Grand Pavilion.
Evan, you want to talk about the food since you're a foodie?
Yeah, I can. So basically they're doing breakfast now. That's really all that they said. They're doing breakfast sandwiches and that they're going to be on the dining plan before anybody asks. So they're from 9 a.m. till 11 a.m., which is awesome for those early entry folk. They'll be able to get breakfast and a bunch of like, breakfasty alcoholic beverages like mimosas and whatnot.
Yep.
And it sounded like, like your standard, like, maybe egg, ham and cheese or egg sausage cheese type
maybe
sandwiches
and
stuff
Benedict
like that.
Or something.
Yeah. Probably nothing super crazy, but I think it's really awesome to have a breakfast food on the meal plan, because I think maybe not necessarily us, but we know a good portion of people that maybe get there for early entry and then leave the park at like 4. So that makes it super convenient for them to get some breakfast, get a second meal, for lunch, and then go home and do whatever they do. So I think that's really cool. It's a really good option. And I probably won't use it very much because if I'm there for early entry, I'm probably there all day and I don't want to blow a meal plan that early. But hey, it's a good option. And I think a lot of people, especially staying at Breakers, are going to take advantage of it.
I was going to say they're also adding a vegetarian option too. They announced that, and they're going to have like seasonal fruit cups and creamy pesto pasta and home style buttermilk biscuits, smashed fried red potatoes.
Yeah, this is at Farmhouse.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry. I did not. Yes. And then also herb citrus Brussels sprouts. So they're definitely, I know a lot of people are like, do you don't have anything for vegetarians or, A, B, C, and D. Well, they're starting to hit those, which is really cool. So like maybe, Wild Turnip obviously isn't open this year. And so a lot of people have been asking like, where can I go? Where can I go? Well, there's two, so yeah.
It seems like there's, what Carson just mentioned, some of that stuff has been on the menu for a good while, but they're just kind of bringing more attention to it now, which is good. And I think I forget what the other restaurant was. Maybe Grand Pavilion. No, it was Miss Keats. They mentioned the vegetarian options there too. I think it was Miss Keats. I don't know. They made a nice little graphic post about like, hey, here's the vegetarian options at these 2 restaurants. So like, go try them out and stop asking us questions. So yeah, that's really good to see for us non-cow eating friends.
Right.
So we're kind of blowing through the news today because we want to be ready to go to give our interview with Lost Islands GM here, Eric, enough time. But so it's going. The next big thing is, of course, I don't think we mentioned it at all here, but Fury 325 had its crack and it's been closed for couple weeks now, and the news there is that first off, Carowinds has been super transparent about everything that's going on, which is awesome. They've gone in great detail about what B&M, the coasters manufacturer, is doing, and what the park is doing, and what the state is doing as far as inspections and this and that. They're replacing the support, and as of this recording, I believe they are like literally as we are speaking, they are welding the new support that replaced the cracked one back into place. And what'll follow that is they said 500 cycles and it's not going to be just we're going to send it 500 times and everything's great, we're going to go. They'll send it a few times, they'll check the new support, they'll send it a few more times, this and that, and they do a whole host of other tests.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but at the beginning of the season at all of these Cedar Fair parks, isn't 500 the number that it needs to run before it can be commissioned by the state?
I actually think it's a lower number than that.
It depends on what ride. I think that I thought it was like around 100 cycles or so if like the ride or something hasn't been touched at all, and it's the same thing pretty much from last year. But I thought I heard something like if they have to replace a chain, or whatever, they have to run.
Yeah, it might vary on what was like Carson said, if the chain was replaced or I don't know, a support was replaced, or
I could be wrong, but I seem to remember a couple years ago on like it was when they still did pass holder preview night before opening day, and I remember that Millennium Force was not open, and
I remember that.
Yeah, and the employee out front had said something about we have to run it 500 times, but maybe that wasn't the number, or maybe he was just blowing smoke.
For whatever reason, I have 100 stuck in my head.
Okay,
but
I've also have 300 in my head too. So,
and I've also heard recently. I mean, none of what we're speaking is fact. This is just what we've heard and
just hearsay
through the grapevine. But I've also heard like it's got to run just like X amount of consecutive hours without a major fault or something like that.
That would make sense.
Okay, a sensor might miscommunicate and put the ride down, but like nothing like, I don't know. I don't know
gets
what would be
stopped on the lift
considered a
hill or
ma-
something.
I,
And it's
yeah, I
like,
don't know what
well,
a major fault would be, but like something out of the ordinary, just some, you
Yeah.
know, the little breakdowns that happen every day. It's like, okay, we're cool, but as long as it can get running for a consistent amount I don't know. There's a lot that goes into that, but it seems like whatever Carowinds is doing is much more extensive than just like off-season commissioning for the upcoming year. So that's really good. So they'll do those 500 laps. B&M is going to come in and recertify it. And then they said a third party is going to come and inspect it too.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that'll be the state of whichever state Fury is in. I don't know if
maybe
it's in north or
both.
south.
I mean, it's in both states, so maybe both.
I think they go by where the station is.
Yeah, I was to say, I believe at Carowinds they go by where the station is, which for Fury would be North Carolina.
I believe north, yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah. So there's a lot going into it. Carowinds been super transparent, which is really awesome and just kind of good to see. I mean, we as enthusiasts, I don't want to sound conceited, but we know better. Like we know that this I don't even want to make light of it, but it's a big deal, but it's not a big deal. That nobody's life was at risk, but it's good to see.
There's a lot of what's
public.
nice with B&M. There's a lot of, and also all the coaster manufacturers and ride manufacturers. There's a lot of fail safes. So like if something were to fail, there's a lot of like things in place that
there's other supports there that were holding up that piece of track.
Right.
But to the general public, and I'm going to put this as nicely as I can, they don't know what we know.
Right.
So they see, oh my God, a roller coaster support cracked. We were all going to die if we rode that.
Right.
I mean,
And I'm never going to ride a coaster at Carowinds again. But Carowinds is doing everything they can to be like, hey, everything's cool. You'll be okay.
My thought in this matter, regardless of if you're a roller coaster enthusiast or not, is, I mean, that is scary. I mean,
it's freaky as hell to look at.
I mean, had I been there, I don't think I would have felt that my immediate safety was in danger. But I don't think the issue with this happening is so much how the park responded or everything that's going into it, but how it got like this to begin with, I think is the more concerning aspect of. I don't want to call this an accident because accidents usually imply that someone got hurt. So I guess I'll use incident. But I mean, I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter, but people were posting pictures that they took probably during CoasterCon, you know, when you were all there. And, you know, you can see, oh, it's starting to form. Yeah. How did this run for 8 days before we caught it? You know, that's the concerning thing. And I think that should scare anybody, regardless of if you're an enthusiast or not. Again, scare might not be the right word because like you said, there's so many.
It might come, and they might come out with like a new safety thing where they'll, just walk and do a visual inspection now of, harder
support every day or something.
Harder, maybe not like, like a support that's literally just like doing nothing per se.
That was part of their initial statement, was that they're going to start using drones to fly around to the high to reach, or
Kyle's got his drone.
Hard to reach areas.
Yeah.
Kyle's got his drone license, so Kyle's gonna go apply for that job.
I also used to do
really cool job.
I also used to do inspections. I know exactly what they're going to be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so I mean, we've got the technology, and the park's obviously closed when they inspect and do that. I mean, I don't see any issue.
And I want to point out too to that, while it is concerning that it's like, wow, how did it get to that point? That people have this idea that the track is walked every single day and every nut and bolt is inspected every single day on a steel roller coaster. Look at that ride. There's no catwalks. That's impossible. They aren't doing that every single day. So this isn't the last time that those supports were probably looked at that closely was probably the off season.
Yep.
And Fury didn't really have an off season, but so my point is that the last time it was looked at that closely was probably like over the winter.
Like you said,
but it's not like, oh my God, Carowinds is there's malpractice going on there. Yeah. Carowinds isn't taking care of their rides. It's not that.
No, I don't think that's an issue. And, to kind of jump back on what I was saying earlier, there are so many redundancies in place that nobody was in any actual real danger at that time. Had they put 500 cycles on it, maybe that's a different story.
Yeah, then we'll talk.
Right.
But, I don't know. It's odd to me that in obviously such a guest-facing area and somewhere that so many people have view of this, be it employees who, one, know it's an issue or don't. There's so many eyes that could have been on that for that week or however long this crack has been developing. And I guess it's just a little concerning to me that nobody spotted it. But again, I don't know how to feel because, roller coasters, specifically steel, being welded every night when everybody goes home, that's not an uncommon issue. Those supports are welded all the time on some steel coasters.
We saw that with Magnum a couple of years ago.
Well, yeah, and when Wicked Twister opened, they were up there every night welding those supports. That much isn't the issue. I guess it's just how it got to be that bad before somebody of power or somebody who knew what they were looking at knew it was an issue.
Yeah. And I guess in some ways, like, thank God it was over the main entrance. Like,
right.
And I don't want to sound like I'm being negative on the park, because I'm totally not. The way that they've handled this, it's a pure class act, and in every sense of how they've handled it, from closing the ride, inspecting it, getting new supports manufactured, being super transparent with both the general public and enthusiasts and everybody else in the industry to prevent an accident from this happening again, has been world class, and I'm a master class in how to handle something like this. Yeah. So I don't want to fault the park. I don't want to act like I'm scared or concerned to go on these kind of rides. It's just, to me, it has me scratching my head of how it truly got to that point.
Yeah. And to your point too, Kyle, I think I was at Cedar Point the day after this came out, or maybe a day after or whatever, or 2 days later. It doesn't matter. Very soon after this news broke, and I'm looking at the Cedar Point B&Ms like, that support looks a lot like the one on Fury. Now, and I think probably the park is doing that too. I think all the parks are now like, you know what? There's maybe some more things we should be doing here, and thank God nothing happened. Nobody got hurt. Everything was fine. The ride was running as it should be otherwise, and they just closed it and everything was okay. And maybe this is a good thing. Maybe this will be an eye-opening experience and really drive home more safety measures going forward, and really avoid anything bad happening. I don't want to get into it too much, but there has been accidents in the industry, and mostly recently in Sweden, that could have been avoided. And so maybe, this is something like that could have been avoided, and that more things like this will be avoided because of this, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's all the news that we have scheduled for this week. Let's go ahead and welcome Eric from the Lost Island theme park onto the show. Eric, welcome to the show. We're glad you're here.
Hey, thanks for inviting me, guys.
All right. So could you just start out by telling us, super basic, kind of who you are, what your role is at the park, and we'll go from there?
Sure. So I'm the general manager at Lost Island Theme Park, and I got in that role because the park, as well as our sister facility, Lost Island Water Park, are both family-owned properties that we started with the water park in 2001 and experienced some pretty good success with that, and decided around 2018 to finally pull the trigger on this theme park idea and kind of throw all the chips on the table and see if we could turn Waterloo into a little bit more of a destination spot. And because COVID kind of ruined a lot of things, I fell into the role of overseeing the park operation, because we were having a real hard time finding anybody else that wanted to come run the place in Iowa. So I am doing the best I can with my water park background to make sure that this theme park runs smoothly.
All right, okay. That's super cool. So Lost Island is known for its pretty extensive theming. I mean, everything I've seen online on Twitter and Facebook and all the channels I follow, it just seems like this super immersive, super detailed park, which is awesome, because you, outside of the big players, you don't normally see that, and it's really refreshing to see. Could you tell us a little bit of the story behind all of that theming?
Of course. So when we decided to make this investment in our community, the thing that we wanted to make sure there was an emphasis on is the level of theming, because we do have a number of amusement parks that are within our target market, and we knew that all of these other established parks would just be far too much competition if we tried to get into that same niche. And so we leaned hard into the theming with the water park, and that was a good move for us, and we feel that it's an important part of the park experience. That's why Disney and Universal are so successful, and it's definitely an area of the attractions industry that is lacking in the Midwest. And so
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
the reason for the heavily themed amusement park was we knew that the average attractions visitor is quite a bit different than a water park visitor, where in the water park world you have season pass holders and also just day visitors that are coming for the ambiance. They just want to lay out on a deck chair and listen to the waves and kids having fun, and maybe they'll dip their toes in the water, but it's mostly just about laying out and getting a tan. So it's really easy to get repeat visitors, because if they like the vibe, they're going to come back. In an amusement park, you have people at Six Flags or even the Cedar Fair parks that people are there to ride the rides or maybe eat some of the food and then get out. It's coaster credits, and then you never see those people again. And what we wanted to try to capture were those repeat visitors that the big players in Orlando see, where there are diehard fans that will go half a dozen times in 1 year just for the atmosphere. And it's less about the rides. I mean, the rides are still very important, but they have a connection with those facilities that are just missing from amusement parks. So we spent a lot of years trying to come up with our own IP, and the reason for that is that, I mean, we're not on a Disney budget, and so the idea of the idea of utilizing some existing IP has a lot of negatives attached to it. I mean, there's no guarantee that it would still be popular by the time the park opened, and you are kind of beholden to that IP that everything has to go according to their specs, and so it can cause a lot of delays to construction as well, because everything has to get approved. So we decided, once we made the decision that, you know what, theme park is the direction that we want to go, it was really a pretty easy decision to say, well, we have to develop something that is going to captivate audiences in a way that makes them want to return and have a connection with our space as well. And the challenge has been that we are reverse engineering that theme park idea. Normally the IP already exists, people are familiar with it, they've read the Harry Potter books, they've seen the Disney movies, then the world gets created because people already like that existing media. We created all of that backstory for ourselves to inform the design decisions of the park, but we now have to kind of deliver it to the guests on the back end by through our companion app is the first way, and then we'd like to get a novel written and some other ancillary parts.
That's cool.
That's the direction that we're trying to go.
Okay.
So I don't think any of our listeners are very familiar with the specifics of Lost Island. Can you go into what that theming is, like what the story is?
Oh, sure. Okay, so the idea of the park was kind of based on Islands of Adventure in terms of making the park, breaking the park up into 5 different realms. So we have a children's area where all the rides are geared towards people under 42 inches tall, and that's the spirit realm. So everything in there is mushrooms and bright colors, and it's kind of like a Cirque du Soleil meets Candyland drug trip, bright colors and fun
Little
stuff.
kids like bright colors, so
Yeah, right. So then you will move past that area. That's also where our kind of the magical guardians of the park are located. They're called Tamariki, which is a Maori word for children. So we have these little sprites around the park that are depicted in sculptures, and then also on the app they guide people through their journey through the park. Then you go into an air realm that has a lot of Adobe architecture that is supposed to simulate clouds. It looks like the
Okay.
buildings from Star Wars on the moon Hoth. And so in the air realm, all of the rides in that area, the riders' feet are off the ground. So we have a Gerstlauer
Oh, okay.
Skyfly. There's a Zamperla Dream, Family Swinger, and then our SLC, as well as a Shot and Drop from SNS. And then as you
Clever.
go
I
through,
like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So you also will have we developed a themed queue for the drop tower, and the reason for that was it's a ride that many people have been on, but it's another way for us to tell the story of the park without there just being signs that you have to read along the way. So when you're going to the drop tower, you go through a number of different rooms that tell you about how the people from the air realm used to have a floating island and it crashed to the ground mysteriously. And if you care to find out about how that happened, you can do that, but it doesn't impact your ability to enjoy your visit. So
Mhm.
at the end of that, there's a pre-show that you watch where the characters talk about how they're trying to regain technology to get them back into the sky, and that you're about to ride one of their prototype inventions, and it doesn't
Oh,
really go
cool.
as planned.
Okay.
All
So you're
right.
taking a otherwise kind of standard ride and really making it stand out.
Correct. And
That's really cool.
we do that in a couple other places throughout the park. So after the air realm, you move into water, which is an homage to the water park. The architecture is very similar with thatched roofs and lots of blues and greens. And many of the rides in this realm are based around water. We have a Zir flying fish that has some water in the center. There we have an interlink water battle ride, so it's like Zamperla battle boats. Then we have a teacup ride that's themed out like water, and our Ferris wheel is on the island that has a really great view of the lake and the surrounding park. So
Okay.
after that, you go into our Earth realm, which has the launch coaster and some spin zone bumper cars and our flume ride. And each of the realms has their own kind of backstory and culture, which we bring out again in the Earth realm. Flume ride also has a themed queue that, as you walk through, you kind of learn about their past as sort of over-eager industrialists, and there's a little bit of a conservation message in that area. And then the end of your journey is in the fire realm, which is really dominated by this giant volcano structure that hides our Sally Dark ride, which is really the climax of your journey through the park. Because if you've been following along in the companion app and the videos that you unlock as you go through each realm. It's telling you that this is the showdown with the park villain that's trying to burn down the island.
Oh,
And
Oh,
it's
nice.
That's
up
cool.
to you
That's cool.
to save the island. And
Yeah.
so
So
that's
obviously people can walk through the park however they want, but the idea is, okay, we have this app and we're going to follow along on our phone, and it's really my phone is really going to help me tell the story as I walk through the whole circle of the park.
exactly.
Okay.
And like I said, I mean, it's not a necessary component, but for people who enjoy going down those rabbit holes, it's the first step. We also have this year we've added themed a cast of characters that are originally from the app that we've brought to life. And so instead of a Disney princess, we have these 9 residents of Lost Island that represent each of the realms, that each have different interactions with guests. They have different interactions with each other. And so you see them throughout the park and they are just another element that make the space more immersive. And
That's
they've
so
been
cool.
very popular.
That's cool. That sounds really cool.
That's
sounds
something
very
I wish
immersive.
I wish I hope that's something that more regional parks look at and say, hey, us as a regional park, we can do this. This is something we can handle, and start seeing that everywhere. Not to steal your thunder, but that's a trend that I think a lot of people would like to see in the industry.
Well, we'd be happy to talk to other parks about doing that as long as they're not too close by.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
Cedar
fair.
Point? Question mark.
Sure.
Because they could, we could all use some more theming here and there.
Right?
But
All
yeah,
about
this sounds
theming.
really cool.
Yeah, it sounds really like.
Can you
fun.
download the app outside of the park and make any sense of
Absolutely.
it from outside of the park?
Yes, you can. So it's just called Lost Island Adventure Guide, and it's available on Android and iOS. You'll get to watch the opening kind of introductory video that just gives you a very brief summary of the park, and then most of the other features are going to be locked, but because you have to kind of gain access to them as you explore the park.
Okay.
But
Mhm.
the one area that you do have access to anywhere is the quiz feature, which is a good way to just kind of learn about the lore and backstory that we spent a lot of time creating.
That sounds cool though. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm like, Kyle, let's jump on a plane and
Yeah.
let's go.
And I said that sounds like my bedtime reading tonight too.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, for sure.
Did this? I don't know if you guys remember Kyle and Carson, but a couple of the Cedar Fair parks did something called Battle for Cedar Point,
Oh yeah.
or Kings Island, or Kings Dominion, and that was probably done too early in the technology world because phones really couldn't keep up with that. I'm sure technology is advanced. Did you know about that? Did you not? I'm not trying to say you copied, but like, did you see that idea of like, hey, that's cool. We're gonna let's take that and run with it. Like, that's an awesome starting point.
So it's interesting that you bring that up, Evan, because we use the same developer that developed
There we go.
that,
Okay.
and we found them independently from Cedar Point. So we saw the app developer at IAPA
Okay.
speaking at a seminar just about the idea of using technology to integrate with a guest experience and an interactive map, and that was really the catalyst, because we were just starting to get going on our theme park development
That's cool.
in earnest, and we said,
Okay.
hey, we want you to develop an app for us, but we also need it to be more than a tool that people can use to find what rides are the right height. We need it to also have a gamification element. And they said, well, it's interesting you say that. We just did something like that for Cedar Point. And we said,
Right.
yes, that, but better. And so
Right.
Yeah.
we instead of having it glommed on, which tends to happen a lot, where a park is existing and they want to do something, but it's going to be prohibitively expensive to do the whole park. You end up with this one ride that is the Battle for Cedar Point, and then this one ride over here is like cowboy themed, and then this ride over here is something else.
Yeah.
And so that was another thing that we wanted to avoid, is the park needed to have a cohesive story, and everything needed to make sense, instead of this is one thing and this is another, and then we'll try to come up with a weird way to tie the two areas together.
Awesome.
That's really cool. I was gonna say really quick, does like your guys' story and your characters and everything, was that all like family written and came up with and everything, or did you guys like hire like a third party source and they kind of like came up with like the story and the characters and everything?
Oh, Karsten, we did that all by ourselves.
Okay.
in a vacuum. And so it was extremely nerve-wracking to get to the point where we put this out there, because we were basically working in an echo chamber. So it was me and my wife, and my parents were somewhat involved, but mostly me and my wife just saying, well, what about this idea? And then we'd float it to Gary and Becky, and they'd either say, no, we don't like that, or, oh, yeah, that could work. And so about 6 years of that before we finally said, okay, this is the final product, we're sticking with this. And then we just crossed our fingers that people were going to like it.
It's really cool for you guys. Like it really is all of your ideas come to life. Like that's, it's Walt Disney-esque almost in a way. Like
it's like a blank slate, and let's create, I don't know, build the rhino, and and just go from there. What does Bill like to do? He likes to go to amusement parks, and he likes to sit in the shade. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep.
That's super cool.
That's cool. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's
well, thank you.
Really cool, actually. Yeah. So this next question you might not be able to fully answer, and you also might not know the answer yourself, but does your park have kind of a rough 5-year plan, or maybe a 2-year plan that you could maybe share a little insight on, of things we might be able to look forward to in the coming years?
Well, we're like most places, we like to keep things a surprise until we get a little closer. What I can tell you is that the park has been built in a way that all of the realms, except for the water realm, have space for at least 2 major attractions.
Okay.
And we have penciled in a few of those. So we're definitely, if you know anything about the water park, when that first was built in 2001, we had a lot more free cash then, but we were doing an expansion every other year until the attendance sort of plateaued in 2010, which was sort of the impetus for the discussion about a theme park, because we felt like we'd saturated the number of visitors that would visit the water park, and we were trying to figure out a way of bringing more tourism to the area. Okay. So knowing that, the 2 to 5 year plan is we need to grow our attendance to the point where we are self-sustaining like the water park is, and then we plan to be making additional investments. And the thing that we will definitely be doing every year is continuing to add to the immersive theming element. And while that may not be a big deal to the coaster credit folks, it does add to the overall experience. So when we opened the park last year, it was delayed, and some of the rides weren't ready because of issues with supply chain. And we also had a fire that burned down the queue line for the flume. So lots of things didn't go quite right, and we weren't able to do everything that we wanted to. This year is kind of our actual opening year, because all the rides are operating. We were able to get the costume characters into the mix. We also published a dictionary that people can get from the gift shop that will help them decipher codes and sayings that you can find throughout the park, and utilize this made up language that we've created as well. So adding to those sorts of touch points on the experience level are, in comparison, much cheaper and sometimes much more impactful to certain visitors than spending $10 million on a new roller coaster.
Okay.
So
Cool.
that's the plan.
Okay.
Awesome. So I know I'm on Twitter all the time, and probably like my co-host, most everything on my Twitter is either theme park based or roller coaster based, whatever. I have seen a lot of people talking about either I visited Lost Island and it was so much fun, or hey, I have a trip booked to Lost Island next week. Who's been and can give me tips? Is the attendance this year, I mean, obviously I hope it's better than last year. Is it noticeable when you go in the park that, you know, hey, last year was kind of rough and, you know, this is our real grand opening, but people are starting to come and they have amazing reviews?
Yeah, the response has been overwhelmingly positive, which is wonderful. I mean, that's what we are in the business of doing, is exceeding people's expectations. Our attendance numbers have tripled. But
awesome. That's good.
It's good. It's the metaphor that I use, though, is that it's right now the difference between being completely submerged in water and having your eyes above water. So we still have, when you're going from zero to 5 is good, but we would like to see quite a bit more, because the park is built for a maximum attendance of 7,500 guests, and right now our average attendance is about 400. So anybody that wants to have a theme park completely to themselves should really plan on visiting us this year.
Yeah,
because the hope is that now that the messaging has changed from last year, everyone's saying it's not ready, don't go yet, I'm going to wait until they have things figured out, to this year when the reviews have been overwhelmingly positive and I loved my experience and I can't wait to go back. So that hopefully next year that translates into better for us, and I guess maybe less good for the visitors of, okay, now we actually have a crowd that people are waiting to get on the rides.
Yeah,
but
no, for sure.
I think in a way, though, that's even a good thing for visitors, because, I mean, this is something I've definitely said where, you know, we kind of like it busy in a way because it really makes a park feel alive.
Exactly.
And I think that's something people can look forward to, hopefully next year or even by the end of this year.
Well, I was going to say, ACE is having a big conference there next year, and
yes,
I definitely think I'm going to pencil that in for sure if I don't visit the park beforehand, because that conference and everything looks really cool, and all the Acers, like they're great. The ACE, like, actual representatives, and also the, you know, even the membership is really great, and so your numbers will, like, everybody on social media and things like that and posting and stuff like that, I definitely think it'll explode a lot more, just because, like, I actually, like with Kyle, like, I actually have seen on my Facebook probably 4 or 5 different friends that are like, hey, you just got back from, you know, Lost Island and it was really cool and really awesome, and, you know, showing pictures and stuff, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm starting to chomp at the bit just by hearing everything and everything like that. Like, I want to go to Iowa. Like, I want to, like,
same thing that happened with me. Obviously, that's how I found your Twitter.
It's almost like in a way, it's kind of like it's kind of weird, because, like, it seems like America-ish, and it's just my opinion, but it almost feels like when a brand new park opens up, like, for instance, what was it, American Dream Mall in New Jersey and stuff, very, very flat level of attendance, and then, like, you know, a year after or so, then it starts to pick up steam and things like that. It's just word of mouth, everything. Like I went
Yeah.
there and it was completely dead, but then I've seen pictures of them and like it's starting to get a little busier there, and they're starting to do a little things like there. But like it's good, it's good to see, and it's interesting. It's like you guys are the new like version of Holiday World per se, but like obviously more Midwest, and obviously crazy theming compared to what they have and stuff. So I'm excited.
Yeah, a park in the middle of nowhere that's really trying to build something special.
Yeah, for sure.
You got it.
Sweet.
All right. So next up, we have one more kind of Lost Island specific question, and then everything else is kind of geared to you. But not expecting that this is, confirmation or anything, but if you could sit back and look at all the coaster and ride manufacturers out there and just hope and dream, is there one particular manufacturer that you would absolutely love to work with if money wasn't a factor? Like if when you're home at night and you're dreaming, do you dream about any specific manufacturer?
Well, being new to the amusement industry, we have limited understanding of what the manufacturer relationship would be like. I can tell you that we've had challenges with most of them. So based on what I know now, and what I've told you already about kind of the direction that the park is going, the manufacturer that I would love to work with again is putting in another Sally Dark ride.
Ooh,
because
okay.
They if money was no object and we could do whatever we wanted, just because they've been the best partner to work with on the ride side out of any of the others that we work with. Coaster wise, like I said, I mean, I don't want to make anybody mad. We're still new to the industry. I want to keep all of our options open.
That's complete.
Yeah,
completely understandable.
Absolutely. You love them all.
Yeah, everybody equally.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point about the Sally Dark rides, and then also your point about kind of last year being a soft opening, I guess. The thing that I did hear all of last year was, and you're going to have to pronounce the name of the ride to me because I'm going to butcher it and I don't want to.
It's Volcano.
That was like, okay, we went to Lost Island. Yeah, a couple of rides are down, but oh my God, Volcano is just like the greatest thing ever. Like Universal level, Disney level, like beyond that. So I could see where you're coming from, where Sally has been like your number one. Like, yeah, they know what they're doing. This is some cool stuff.
Yeah, they did a great job. We had a really good time designing that ride with Drew Hunter and the rest of the Sally team, and they deserve to win both the Golden Ticket and the Brass Ring Award last year for Best New Attraction, because it is definitely unexpected and exceeds people's expectations for a park in the Midwest. But that was our aim when we asked them to help us build this particular ride, is we want something that no one else has north of Orlando. And they did. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Is it a like, shoot and score points dark ride, or okay?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of dark rides like that, and also a huge fan of flumes. I know us three and a huge group of us are big fans of flumes. So
which you have both. So
exactly right.
Scored points like
Ding,
crazy.
Let's go.
All right. So this one is more specifically geared towards you and not the park. Do you have a favorite amusement or theme park that is not named Lost Island?
Yes, I do. And the one that we drew the most inspiration from was Animal Kingdom.
Okay.
And
okay.
I was actually
not
just
what I
there
was expecting
today.
you to say.
Well, Animal Kingdom is a park that we spent a lot of time at looking at all of the details. And again, we're more in themed entertainment than we are specifically in coasters or attractions. Even it's about theming and creating a space, and so Animal Kingdom has that in spades. When you go through each of their lands, the foliage changes. You have different impressions in the walkways to the point where when you're in Asia, it looks like bikes have been riding through the mud, but it's all concrete. When
Wow.
when you're in Dino Land, the concrete there is made to look like you're in a parking lot, and that it's a carnival setup. And while most people don't recognize those sorts of things, and it just kind of unconsciously hits their brain, for us, we looked at every little detail in that park. I mean, you go over the bridges and there are epoxied melted down candles that people have
Wow.
put votives up, but they're not real. Like it's part of the theming. And you go through I'm blanking on the name of the ride, the Everest.
Yeah,
Expedition
Expedition
Everest.
Everest.
So that queue line, walking through there, they just have hundreds and hundreds of artifacts that are all completely fabricated that people walk through, and most of them never even bother to read. But they're like actual articles that they have written from the 1800s about these Yeti sightings. That it's
Wow.
completely fabricated.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
they just have created such a totally out of this world experience in every corner of that park that it's just that's where we draw the most inspiration from. We tried to put as much of that as we could into our park.
That's a great answer. That's yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I was gonna say I was gonna say maybe Islands of Adventure per se is what I was gonna guess. So.
And they are also a real close second, Karsten.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
because
That's awesome.
Wizarding World of Harry Potter too. I mean, any
my God.
place that when you go into those locations, I mean, one of the major complaints that a lot of people around here have is, well, you don't have as many rides as this park or that park. And it's like, you're right, we don't. We also just opened last year, and we are leaning into the type of park that you would get at Disney, where if you go to Galaxy's Edge or Islands of Adventure or Animal Kingdom, the ride count is not very high. And
Right. Absolutely.
the rule of thumb that we learned years and years and years ago before the water park even was built is that the players in Orlando spend $4 on theming for every $1 they spend on an attraction. And that's something that we have really taken to heart in our developments is even if people don't specifically notice the impressions in the concrete or the fact that the music changes when you move from one area to the next in the park, they do feel it. And that
Absolutely.
whether they can describe it or not does impact their experience, and they may want to come back for just because they had a great time. They can't put their finger on why. So the more of those things that you can put into the park to add to their experience, we feel like the better.
That's
For
awesome.
sure.
I'm
That's
actually
cool.
really glad that you mentioned Animal Kingdom because I live in Orlando. I was just there today, and that is one of my favorite parks, specifically for the reason that you mentioned, just because of how detailed and intricate the theming is. So that's actually really cool.
Not even, I mean, we didn't even talk about Pandora. That's a whole nother thing on its own.
Absolutely.
I really need to get back to Disney. The only Orlando park I visited in my adult life was Universal and Islands of Adventure and SeaWorld too, but I haven't experienced Disney when I actually have the eyes for all of this stuff. So that's
yeah,
definitely
there's a
on the
lot to
bucket list.
see.
All right.
Lot to see.
So I know you mentioned, you're new to the industry, and you're more of a themed entertainment venue than rides and attractions. But do you have a favorite coaster that's not at Lost Island?
So with the limited number of rides that I've been on, and I told the drunk riders this too, I feel ashamed to come on these podcasts without a better education of coasters. And I've only got probably 6 coaster credits if I could remember all the rides I've been on. But the best ride that I have been on that I can remember in recent memory is Hagrid's Wild Ride
Okay. Yep.
at
Okay.
the Wizarding World with the 6 or 7 launches. We were fortunate enough to go on that without it breaking down, which is really great, because the other people that we went with when we were down in IAPA said, yeah, we had to ride it 3 times before we made it through the whole ride without having to stop.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Definitely when you stop on that ride, it definitely takes away, especially if you've never ridden it or you've ridden it a few times, it takes away from the theming and the whole thing.
Yeah, it's
so
like you have time to like kind of exit that world
Yep.
yeah.
mentally.
Well, I think you'll be happy to know that in its more recent years, it's running very reliably to the point where I have not been on that ride where it's broken down in probably close to a year.
Well, you better knock on wood, because
Well, and to counter Kyle's point, I've ridden it once. It was back in February. We got through the whole ride. We hit the brakes at the final brakes where Hagrid says something about like, "Oh, this is fluffy" or whatever. Or not fluffy. The unicorn.
Yeah.
It's a mum.
Yeah.
And we stopped like before getting there, but the audio was playing, and we sat there for like 5 minutes, and it was like, oh, I didn't really get to.
right.
Oh,
Right.
but
It just takes away.
the trains behind us, they got stuck. So, but we got through the whole ride, so I was like, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's a amazing engineering feat.
There's so much to that ride.
We have one launch, and I cross my fingers every time I see it leave the station that it's going to run a second time. So I can't imagine what 7 launches is like to maintain.
All the sensors and this and that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
learning about how dedicated your park is to theming and storytelling is really incredible to hear, because that's actually why I like Hagrid so much. I tell people it's my favorite ride in Orlando, or at least one of them. And I always give rides the parking lot test, and that is, if you were to strip away all of this ride's theming and stick it in a parking lot, would it still be as fun? And to me, the answer on Hagrid's is no, it wouldn't. But what makes that ride just so amazing is the storytelling and the queue and the theming down to the details. And it sounds like your park really does have a lot of that and care about that. So that's really cool in my book. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kyle.
I agree.
All right. So we really only have one more question for you. And this is something we ask all of our guests when they come on the show. And that is, for young people who are in this hobby of themed entertainment and parks and coasters and attractions, do you have any advice for someone wanting to break into the industry?
Think very carefully about your decision.
Okay.
There's a lot to learn. So if you are looking to be front of house, I absolutely encourage them to try to do an internship at a major park that has a lot of experience with that, because we've had a few people coming to us that are finishing school in hospitality, and they want to come work with us. And it's like, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we also are way too new to know how to give you the tools that you need, because we're just figuring it out ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of the smaller parks would probably be in that same bucket. And so getting your feet wet at a big facility so that you either learn what you like or don't like about a big park, because they do have so many more potential positions available, that's where I would steer them first. And then if, yes, this is what I like, but maybe I don't like the corporate red tape and hierarchy, and I want something a little bit smaller to manage, then after you've made that decision, then go to a smaller park and because there are always openings,
Mhm.
and go about it that way. That would be my advice: is start big and work your way down.
Okay.
Sure.
Interesting. Yeah, it's we like Kyle said, we ask that question all the time, and I think all of our guests have had different answers, but yet they all build on each other.
Yeah.
So that's cool to hear things. I mean, obviously we're younger people. I just graduated with my mechanical engineer's degree. Kyle's in marketing. We're also kind of wanting to look at the industry as a job venture too. So while it helps us, it's cool to hear for us too. It's also awesome for anybody for our listeners to really hear all these different words of advice and build on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, would it have been nice to have a few more interested and experienced people join our team at the beginning, so we didn't have to figure this out kind of trial by fire?
Mhm.
Yes. But at the same time, that doesn't help young people that are trying to get into the industry, because if any of you would have gotten hired at Lost Island in 2022, we would have been saying, well, Evan, you want to figure out how this launch coaster works? So
Yeah, that's probably discouraging, to
be
say
like,
the least.
we have is the manual, and you just gotta
I'd be
make
like,
your
look,
own
dude,
book.
I don't know what I don't know, so
yeah. Well, you can
Peace.
call France and Intamin, but they're 6-hour time change, so we'll
Yeah.
need you to be working from midnight until when the park closes, so that you're able to talk to them first.
Wow.
right.
That's crazy. That's just that's some pulling back the curtain just a little bit of what parks have to go through to so the coaster goes down. You gotta wait 6 hours to talk to
It's
somebody.
not an immediate call because a lot of these big boys are overseas.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
So
Nice.
that's why I would say go at least an established park. You could maybe reach out to some smaller ones, but at least make sure that it's an established park that's going to be able to give you some experience and good knowledge on how to be successful in the industry before wanting to be involved in something like us.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Fair enough.
Eric, we really want to thank you again from the bottom of our heart for coming on the show. This has been an incredible interview, and I think I speak for all of us when I say after talking to you and listening to your answers, I am more hyped than ever to plan a trip out to your park. It sounds incredible, and I wish you guys all the success in the world. I know I'm going to try to do my part to get out there and support you and share as much as I can and try to persuade other people and I really hope
And
that,
buy all the merch and buy all the beer and
Buy everything.
Great. That sounds awesome. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys, and we look forward to welcoming you to Lost Island, and hope your listeners are just as excited to come visit.
Yeah.
Visit Lost Island. It sounds freaking amazing. Not gonna lie. Do it. Just do it.
Yeah. Hashtag visit Lost Island 2023.
Yes, right. There you go. Influx of 1,000 people, maybe, or plus whatever tomorrow. So
I'm looking forward to it. I'll hold you to
that. Awesome.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Rundown on Fun. Next week, we'll have some interesting topics, as all three of us are going to Hershey Park together this weekend for the Coaster Crew event, and we'll be talking about news. That's all I got.
Yep, and just another special thanks to Eric from Lost Island. It's really awesome to hear from industry members all the time. And Hershey news next week, and my 400th credit.
Congratulations.
Wildcats Revenge.
Evan, you're such a nerd, and I can't wait to talk about that and everything. And make sure you share the podcast with all your friends. We love everybody that does it. So,
all right, that's it.
Thank you for listening to the Rundown on Fun. Be sure to follow us on social media to stay up to date on all things Cedar Fair. As always, be kind to your ride operators, and we will see you on the Midway. Good night.